I want to welcome all of you back to another one of these short videos where I introduce you to people not only important to me in my world, but who are also a part of the faculty for the SCG Leadership Institute launching in March. Now, today is a real joy. It's a real treat because I am joined by Ankush Jain, who is not only my coach, not only one of the premier world-class greatest coaches on the planet, but this feels like a really cool opportunity for me to share a little bit about why I'm bringing him into the school. And I want this video not to be promotional, but I want this to be of value to you. I want this to be, I want us to have a short conversation, give you a taste of what's available inside of the program. And if all you do is watch this short conversation we have, I want you to walk away with something that shifts something in your mind, shifts something in the way you show up in the world, shifts the leader you're being in your organization. Now, before we jump right in, I want to tell you a little bit about who Kush, I call him Kush, who Kush is and what he's up to, because I think it matters. It's one of the reasons that I brought him in as faculty. See, he's not just another coach. I could go on and on about what he's done for me in my world and my life and how things have massively changed to our work together. But I want to talk about the larger game he's playing. What this man is up to, and he may speak to it in this conversation, is shifting the consciousness of the planet, raising the consciousness of the planet and waking people up, waking you up to a level of global leadership. The man plays big games and he is inspiring coaches, he is inspiring leaders, he is inspiring anybody who spends time with him to play a larger game and make a different impact. And let's be honest, the people that are joining the cohort, the people that are a part of this Leadership Institute are asking that very question. How do I play a bigger game? How do I make more impact in my world, in my organization, with my team? How do I create a higher level of results? So, Kush, thank you for taking a few minutes and joining us for this short conversation.
Hey, thank you, Deryl, for having me here, and thank you for such a wonderful introduction.
Yeah, man. And why don't we just start there? The beautiful thing is I don't overthink these questions. We just kind of go where it naturally goes. So I've spoken to a little bit of what you're up to in the game you're playing, but I would love to invite you to speak to what has drawn you to this idea of helping leaders step into higher and higher levels of impact to play a global leadership game.
No, thank you. It's a great question. It's a great place for us to start. And I also want to say this, I don't do a lot of these. I get requests to be on people's programs and faculty, and I don't say yes to everything. But there was a reason why I said yes to you, and it's not just because we work together, but it was an opportunity to really help leaders step up in terms of their role. Now, I think whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, whatever your beliefs are, whatever country you're from, I believe most people see that the world needs leaders more than ever. And it's not the same old traditional model of leadership that we've had all of these years and all of these decades, which has got us to where we've got to, and you can have your opinions on that. But for the new world, we need a different level of leadership. And what I'm really keen on doing is helping people see that often the leaders that we're looking for is us. So you and I have had conversations about this, and I've had conversations with other people about this. But this has really come out of my own journey. This isn't just something that I sat in a boardroom or on a whiteboard and just created. But I started to see that in my own life, I've had so much growth and development that I've gone from someone who's very, very insecure, liked the idea of leadership, but never felt like a leader, through to kind of stepping into that, growing as a person, and kept on growing. I've been a huge believer in, you know, my own growth and looking at what I could achieve and pushing myself to see what's possible. And now what I'm looking at is what kind of leader would I need to be to impact, the planet, create global level impact. And so that's having me step up to a different level. But what I see at the same time is that isn't a me thing, that same potential is in every single leader that I speak to and I know. It's an innate trait that we have. And I've been saying for over a decade now that, I'll sometimes speak to leaders and say, and anyone on this call can do this, anyone listening to this recording, is let's just imagine, we'll create an imaginary scale, and just say 0 to 100. And let's just create this and say, okay, let's say 100% is you at your maximum potential. You're in flow. Your everything's working out. That's 100%. That's like the best version of you, given who you are, given your background, given your experiences. We're not going to change any of that, but just who you are, the best version is 100%. What level of leadership are you operating at? And I'll leave a kind of a few seconds for people just to really think about this. And if you've got a piece of paper, write it down and just write down an actual number. So if you haven't done it, do it now. Write down the level of leadership and it's made up, but it will give you a guide. And people write down typically anywhere from 5% to like 70 or 80%, typically. And most people are around kind of 20 to 60 is what I found. So people come up with a number, and that's okay, that's a guide. And what I always say is it's not about necessarily getting to 100%. So let's say you're at 20%, but if we move from 20% to 25%, that's actually a massive shift. The impact of that incremental shift is humongous. And people try and put these unrealistic goals or whatever out there and go, oh, I'm gonna, be firing on all cylinders all of the time, whatever. But that's not the really cool piece. The really cool piece for me is whatever you think 100% is more like 1%. And when I share that with leaders, it really kind of opens something up for them. So it's this almost paradox where the game that we can play is way, way, way bigger as leaders than we realize. Way bigger. Way bigger in terms of revenue, way bigger in terms of impact, way bigger in terms of legacy. And on the flip side, the steps we take together, we don't need to make scary, unrealistic steps. But if we keep making incremental steps forward, that compounds over time. And before you know it, you're operating at a completely different level of leadership than you've ever operated at before.
That sums up so much of what is available and the conversations, the games that we want to play as a part of this program. And I think you hit on really on something really interesting. And I always tell clients, one of the benefits of having a coach is there's a lot of things that happens in their minds, the thoughts they have about who they are, who they're not. A lot of people will use the phrase imposter syndrome. There are things that go on that nobody's talking about. But because I'm a coach, I get to hear these conversations. I get to see the patterns. And you spoke to this idea of who we think we are as leaders. There's a lot of leadership programs out there that are filled with frameworks, that are filled with building skills, that are filled with strategies and tactics. And we will have all of that. But you're hitting at a deeper conversation that is going to be central to what we do over the 6-month journey of the school. And that is that the way people see themselves, right? Their identity, what they believe to be true about themselves and what they're capable of will shift as a result of being engaged in this program. So I would love for you to speak to kind of that relationship, right? Because leadership is something, it can easily be seen as something to do. I need to develop this skill. I need to communicate better. I'm going to read a book or a podcast. What is the next thing I need to do as a leader to create a result? How do you see the connection between identity, how we see ourselves, the thoughts we have about who we are as leaders and as individuals, and the impact that has on the results leaders are creating?
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I'm really excited about your school because you're right, there are all of these programs out there which teach wonderful information. I'm not knocking any of those, but you're a coach first and foremost. And you haven't been like a corporate trainer that's gone into coaching. You've started with coaching. And the thing that Daryl, as a coach, is you've got to be practical and you've got to be pragmatic. Coaches are on the front line when you're working with a client. I don't have time to get theory and just think about things in general. It's like you're hired to really make an impact in a very short space of time with the leaders that you work with. So you've got to cut out all the bump. And so I know you're going to bring all of that to this leadership program that you've got, this institute, because that your background is that. And rightly so, one of the things you've identified is identity. And one of the things I talk to people about is you cannot outdo your self-image. Another way to put that is your leadership ability or leadership impact is capped by your self-image. So leaders, as you know and I know, often have all of these thoughts and insecurities that they don't tell anyone, and they can be very, very, very successful leaders externally. And leadership can also be quite a lonely place because they're at the top and they're on their own. But whatever's going on in their head has a way bigger impact on their ability to lead and the results that they get and the motive, whether they motivate people, all of that stuff, all of the great aspects of leadership will be inhibited or enhanced by the leader's self-image. Now, what we're not talking about is, affirmations and pumping yourself up and false false confidence. That's not what we're talking about. You're talking about real level identity when you're on your own, when no one else is no one else is around you. It's just you and your thinking, how you see yourself. Because you can be a remarkable leader or a remarkable human being. You can be extremely talented. You can have fantastic results. And when you're alone with your thoughts, you can think you're the biggest fake on the planet. Well, if you've got that going on in your head, there's no way that doesn't inhibit you in terms of what you can achieve in the world. There's no way. And when we look at it, the other side, if you see yourself in the best light, there's no way that doesn't enhance your leadership ability. There's a saying, one of my mentors said to me, over a decade ago, he goes, if you saw yourself the way that other people saw you, you would be shocked. And he was saying it from a point of view of, in general, in his experience, and this guy was very experienced for a couple of decades working with people, his experience was most people's self-image is far worse, is far, far, far worse than um, other people's view of them. That's not to say someone doesn't think something negatively about you, that happens. But in general, most people's self-image does not live up. One, it doesn't live up to reality. And two, it doesn't even live up to what other people think of them. So when we can do some really deep work around that to permanently shift that, not as an affirmation, not as pumping you up, but really working on that to appropriately wake up and have an appropriate self-image for your skills, talents, and who you are in the world, it unlocks a level of potential that people didn't even realize was there. And you are extremely skilled at that. And I'm looking forward to, in my contribution to your school, talking about that with your leaders.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful point. And you know this well, that so much of what I bring to clients is based on the experiences that I've had. Right. I've seen what this unlocking and unleashing looks like as I shifted. There were so many things that I believed to be true about me, and to wake up and see that they're simply ideas, that there's something that I picked up along the way, and what it looks like to be on the other side of that, and what that makes possible not only for individual leaders. And when we talk about leadership, we're talking about self-leadership, talking about leadership in your family and leadership in your organizations. Right? There is not a place anywhere in my life that our work hasn't impacted, and the school's going to be the same way. We're going to coach and work with and speak to all of somebody's experience. So I want to keep these fairly short. So the last piece I want to touch on is actually going to be one of the first pieces of the program. Now, I think you know this, but if you don't, your book, Sweet Sharing, this is my favorite book to give to leaders. It is a it's an invitation to think about how you show up in the world differently, to access parts of our mind, to access the power of our thinking and see the practical application. I have a client who not only did I send him this book and he read it and he got a ton of value out of it, but he gave it to members of his staff. And he told me a story that he came back and there's a chapter you have in here on that speaks to there are no difficult people. There are no difficult people. And my client was frustrated. He was talking about somebody in his world that he was finding difficult. And his direct report said, I think you need to go back and read that chapter in Cush's book. So, just as a quick preview of something that's available to people in the program, what is what would you say is the value of your book of sharing your stories? And I know many of these stories come when you were in corporate, when you were in procurement. So there's a lot of stories of you in the corporate world and how you navigated and created your experience through that. But how would you speak to what's available inside of this book if people show up fully, bring their best listening to it, and really pull out the gold that you've written?
Yeah, thank you. So that book came out of many years of working with one of in my mind, the top psychologists on the planet, who has really found a new paradigm in psychology. So right now in psychology, we have a kind of a mixed paradigm where a bunch of different psychologists thinks the mind works in a bunch of different ways. And William James, who was, the grandfather of modern psychology, said if we find, the one paradigm in psychology, it'd be the greatest invention since fire. And Dr. Keith Blevins believes he's found that. And so I trained with him for many years. And I saw huge implications of his work on so many things that were relevant in my life. And they were the exact opposite of most conventional wisdom. So, for example, it wasn't about dealing with difficult people, it was realizing that that's just a thought and a creation. And I've talked about in the book about stress, I've talked about racism, I've talked about dealing with anger. And a lot of the things that I spoke to were very different and often opposite to, what I had been told or a different take on it. And it really helped me navigate some of the challenges that I had in the corporate world or in leadership, like having a difficult, line manager or dealing with difficult people or handling, a stressful target driven environment. And how when I started to do this training and I was still in corporate, life just got so much easier. I started having way more time than I ever had before. I just completely stopped procrastinating. I started getting way more creative and having better ideas. In essence, I was getting more done in less time and at a higher quality. So for leaders, that's a pretty good thing to look at to work that out, not just for yourself, but also for the people who work for you. And you're not the first coach who said that. I have other coaches who've told me that this book is such a different book to most business books, and it was never written as a business book, but it really lands with leaders. So I'm excited for us to cover some of that in the program, and I know you've got a real deep understanding of everything that's in the book too.
Yeah. And look, there's going to be a small group of us that journey as a part of this program over 6 months. The reason why I make videos like this, so thank you for taking some time to record this video, but the impact we want to have on leadership is far beyond the 20 or 25 folks that are going to be on this journey. Right. These videos, this book, so sweet sharing, some of the things we're pointing to, we want to be impactful. So one of the benefits of the program is going to be there are going to be tangible pieces that the people in the program are able to take back to their organizations. I'm having a conversation with two leaders who have each put three of their senior directors into the program. And we're speaking on Friday about what it looks like for their senior directors, the leaders who are going on this 6 month journey to bring some of the goals, some of the value back so that it has an impact on the entire organization. So these videos are a gift to anybody who happens to watch and also an opportunity to get a glimpse of what's available. So, Kush, you know this as a part of faculty, we're going to do these master classes. They will be, Zoom meetings that people are coming to where people will be able to interact with you. It's not a presentation. I'm not asking you to come present for a couple hours to anybody. This is going to be a Q&A where people are able to ask real questions that have real impact in their organizations. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time today. Thank you for being a part of faculty and for the gift you will be to each and every person inside of this program.
Thank you for having me, Deryl. It's been great talking to you today, and I'm really looking forward to the Institute.
Yeah, me too. And for anybody watching this, if you have questions about what it would look like to be a participant in the program, if you are curious as to the impact being a part of this journey might have on you and the results you're creating at work, at home, and everywhere else, you know how to get a hold of me. Drop me a message. We can have a conversation around that. The people that are enrolling are fascinating. They're powerful. There's going to be as much value from each and every one of the participants as there are from me and the faculty, and it's all going to come together in a really powerful way. So if that calls to you, if you're drawn to that, let's have a conversation around it. Thank you, Kush. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.